Hey guys, good afternoon. This is the Chapter 2 video lecture. I'm sorry, Chapter 3 video lecture. I'll be covering the cardiovascular system in a second. But before I get started, I want to remind you of some upcoming due dates. You can see on the calendar on Blackboard, you can see that your video discussion number 1 and your exam number 1 will be due on Sunday by 11:59 p.m. The video discussion 1 will cover chapters 1 through 4, so be sure to be reading on those chapters and watching the videos and making sure you go over the notes. And then exam 1 will cover the same chapters. Okay, I'll open up the exam probably Friday morning, so you'll have all weekend to complete the exam. All right, so to complete the video discussion, go to the assignments tab. And then scroll down to video discussions and the discussion board assignments. Okay, so it's a 2-part assignment, and both parts have to. Well, the first part has to be has to be completed by the 17th, which is Sunday night, and then the second part can be completed on Monday night, which is the 18th. Okay, so I have 2 links listed under this file. I have the instructions, which is a PDF file. So if you open up the instructions, it tells you what you're responsible in completing in the video discussion, and then your discussion board responses. Okay, so for the video discussion, you have to record a 3 to 5 minute video of yourself discussing any of the following prompts. The 3 prompts are: number 1, your prior in or out of class experiences with the content from the chapters. Or number 2, your excitement about learning new information that you had not seen before or had not understood previously. Number 3, your perspective on how this content may help you in your professional career. All right, so you just have to address one of those 3 prompts and apply those prompts to chapters 1 through 4. And you can see that the video discussion assignment number 1 is only covering chapters 1 through 4. And then you'll apply the same prompts to the remaining chapters of the course in your video discussion number 2. Okay, so for video discussion number 1, you only have to apply one of these 3 prompts to the content from chapters 1 through 4. Okay, in each of your recordings, please introduce yourself and greet your fellow group members. I'll tell you who your group members are in a second. Also, do not simply just read the prompt and provide a simple answer. What I'm really wanting is a conversation. I know this is virtual, it's an online class, but I still want you to explain your perspective to your group mates. Okay, so just, it's almost like you're talking to them like I'm talking to you now. Okay, and then the second part, so you're going to record that video, 3 to 5 minute video, it's not very long, and then embed that video into your group's discussion board, and I'll show you where to find that in a second. Okay, and then the second part, so the first part, the video is due on Sunday, the 17th. The second part is the discussion board responses. Those are due on Monday the 18th, and all you're doing is just watching the videos posted by your group members only. Okay, you don't have to watch everybody's unless you want to, but you don't have to. You only have to watch the videos that are posted by your group mates and then respond to those videos. Okay, and the responses can be whatever you want. You can talk about how you've had similar experiences, how you like that they've shared the information. You can talk about whatever you want, but I do highly encourage you to use professional language and be extremely respectful to everyone, even in disagreement or debate. That's fine. That's one of the ways we learn is through discussion. So it's one of the reasons why I have this assignment. So those are the instructions. So going back to the discussion board, you can see here that there's video discussion number 1 listed. That's where you'll begin this first part of the assignment. You click on it, and I've given you the group members. So group 1, Victoria, Anthony, Divinity, and Aaliyah. All you guys have to do is just watch each other's videos and then respond to those videos. Okay, you don't have to watch any videos posted by any of the members in group 2 or group 3. Okay, so group 2, you're only responsible for your group's videos, and likewise with group 3. Okay, so those are the groups for this particular discussion board. Now, there may be a different set of groups for the second video discussion assignment. But for now, these are your group members. Okay, so in order to complete the assignment, you click on the discussion boards, and you can see there's Group 1's discussion board, Group 2's discussion board, Group 3's discussion board. So if you're in Group 1, you click on Group 1, and then you create your thread. And to post your video, remember to click on the video icon and then embed your URL to the YouTube video. Or if you've saved your video to a computer file, then you can browse your computer to find your video and embed it. Okay. But either way, I want to be able to see all the videos in one location rather than having to go back and forth to YouTube. Okay. So once you're done with that, you'll have a list of all the videos, and you just simply reply to the videos and then complete the second part of the video discussion assignment, which is a discussion board assignment, by simply typing a comment of the video you just watched. And as long as it's directly related to the video, you can say whatever you want to say. Okay? All right, so that's the discussion board assignment. Hopefully you guys understand what's going on. If you're in Group 2, you would obviously go to the Group 2 form and not the Group 1 form. Right here. Okay, and if you're in Group 3, then you would open up Group 3. Okay, so remember, you don't have to watch videos or post commentary on videos that are outside of your group. Okay, that are posted by members outside of your group. Okay, and like I said, for the exam, I'll open it up on Friday morning. It'll be open note, open book. So anything that you have access to from Blackboard, any resources I've given you, whether it's textbook information, notes, lecture notes, video, everything is up for grabs. There isn't a review because you have access to everything. And there's a 1 hour and 20 minute time limit. That's the amount of time that students in a regular classroom would have. You're not going to need that much time. And then I'll give you 2 attempts. Okay, so those are the guidelines for exam 1. Okay, so let's start talking about the cardiorespiratory system and fitness. All right, so the cardiorespiratory fitness is defined in the book as the ability of the cardiovascular and respiratory systems to supply oxygen and nutrients to large muscle groups to sustain dynamic activity. Okay, so obviously, the more capable you are of generating this system in terms of supplying oxygen to the muscles, then the more you're capable of doing. So the better fit you are. Okay. So in order to understand the cardiorespiratory system, I'm going to break it down into the 2 individual systems that make up the cardiorespiratory system, and that's the cardiovascular system and the respiratory system. All right. Now, each of those systems are distinct. They serve distinct purposes. However, they're interrelated, so we often, refer to them as a cardiorespiratory system. But it's not the it's the cardiorespiratory system is that interaction. But the cardiovascular system is totally separate, and the respiratory system is totally separate. It's just that there's a unique interaction between those two that they kind of rely on each other. Okay. So the cardiovascular system, also known as the circulatory system because it circulates all the blood throughout the body, consists of the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood itself. So anything that affects those 3 systems, the heart, the blood vessels, and the blood, is called a cardiovascular disease. Okay, so a lot of people feel or think that cardiovascular disease is referring to the heart, and it does capture diseases of the heart, but it also captures diseases of the blood vessel and the blood itself. So cardiovascular disease can be anything. So when we talk about cardiovascular disease later on, we'll start identifying specific diseases that fall under that umbrella term. Okay. The respiratory system is also known as the pulmonary system. The pulmonary is in reference to the lungs. I think there's a Latin term for lungs is something regarding pulmonary. If you hear of respiratory or pulmonary, it's the same system, and it consists of the air passageways in the lungs. So it doesn't sound like there's a lot going on with the respiratory system, but there are some chief characteristics that allows the respiratory system to function adequately. Okay. So again, the main function of the two systems is to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the tissues and organs. All right, so looking more closely at the cardiovascular system, so I'll start with the heart, and I mean that's, I guess that's the a good starting point. I'll get into details of the heart. So whenever, in a second, how it functions as a four-chamber two-pump system. But I'll discuss that in a second. Whenever the blood starts there, and whenever it's pumped out of the heart, it starts to navigate through. So whenever the blood leaves the heart, it's carried throughout the body through a network of blood vessels. All right, so we have different types of blood vessels. Any blood vessel that carries blood away from the heart is known as an artery. And almost every single artery in the body is carrying oxygen-rich blood, except for the artery that delivers blood to the lungs. That particular artery, known as the pulmonary artery, is carrying blood that's deprived of oxygen or is rich in carbon dioxide. And I'll explain that process in a second. And then you have blood vessels that return blood back to the heart. Those are known as the veins. Okay, and most veins in the body, with the exception of the pulmonary vein, which comes from the lungs, is carrying oxygen-deprived blood or blood that's rich in carbon dioxide. Okay. Now it states here that there's a third kind of artery, blood vessel, known as the capillaries, and the capillaries are a blood vessel, but before the capillaries, the arteries are broken down to smaller blood vessels known as arterioles, and those arterioles then break down into the capillaries. Now the capillaries are very thin blood vessels. They're usually located in the beds of tissues, the muscles. They surround the organs, and surround the brain, and really they surround the cells. And so the thin walls of the capillaries allows for gas exchange. So blood that has oxygen, the oxygen in the blood then is transported via the capillaries into the cells, and then the carbon dioxide that's produced by the cells is then transported into the capillaries, and then the capillaries start to merge to form the venules, which are smaller veins, if you will. And then the venules merge together to form the veins, and that's how the blood circulates back to the heart. Okay. Several different types of blood cells, but for this course, we're going to focus primarily on red blood cells. Okay. All right. So the heart itself, as I mentioned earlier, is a four-chamber, two-pump system. All right. So the four chambers are the right atrium and the left atrium. You can see here the left atrium, and then you have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So you have the two atria, which is plural, atrium singular. All right, so you have the two top chambers, those are the atria, and then you have the two bottom chambers, which are the ventricles. Okay, so that's a four-chamber system. All right, so I also mentioned it's a two-pump system. All right, so the two pumps is the two atria. So the first pump are the two atria contracting at the same time, and I'll explain why in a second. And then you have your two ventricles contracting at the same time just after the atria contract. All right, so the simultaneous contraction of the top chambers, those are two chambers, they contract at once, and then the two bottom chambers contract at once. Okay, so it's a four-chamber, two-pump system. All right, now the heart itself is located directly behind the sternum, tilted to the left and tilted slightly upward. It's about the size of the fist. Okay, so that's the heart. All right, so you can see here's a posterior view or a view of the back side of the heart. Again, you have the right atrium and the left atrium. Those are the two atria on top. And then you have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Those are the two chambers on the bottom. Okay. Now, to give you an idea of what the chambers look like inside the heart, here's an internal view of the heart. So again, you see the two chambers up top. These are the two atria, the right atrium and the left atrium, and then you have the two bottom chambers, the two ventricles. You have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Okay. All right. So so the heart, whenever the heart pumps, it pumps blood outside of the heart. Okay. So so again, the heart is, what we consider the starting point, and where it starts is whenever the blood from the entire body returns to the heart. Okay, so blood from the entire body returns and is dumped into the right atrium. So that's the first chamber. Okay, you can see here at the just above the right chamber, or the right atria. This is the superior vena cava, which is the one of the two largest veins in the body. And then just below the right atrium, you have the right ventricle. Inferior vena cava, which is also one of the two largest veins in the body. So these two veins are the two largest veins in the body. All right. So the superior vena cava delivers blood, or it drains blood from the upper body, from the head, neck, and arms. Okay, all the way to the fingers. Okay, so that's the superior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava carries blood from the lower parts of the body. So anything below the heart. So anything in the abdominal area, through all the way down to the pinky toes. Okay. All right. So and then also dumping into the right atrium is blood from the heart itself, and I'll explain that process in a second. Okay. So all of the blood that's dumping into the right atrium is deoxygenated. The oxygen has already been stripped by all the tissues that needed oxygen. Okay, so again, blood is delivered to the tissues. The tissues pick up oxygen. They give up carbon dioxide, and all of the carbon dioxide rich blood is dumped into the right atrium. Okay, all right. I'll explain what's happening at the left atrium in a second. But just know for now that the two atria contract at the same time. So you have that first pump. All right, so the two atria contract at the same time. In the right atrium, the blood from the right atrium is then pushed or pumped into the right ventricle. Okay, and the same thing happens in the left atrium, but I'll explain that blood in a second. Okay, all right. So you had the first contractions were the two atria contracting, and blood from the right atrium is pumped into the right ventricle. Okay. Shortly after, almost immediately after the two atria contract, the two ventricles contract. And at this point, the blood from the right ventricle, which was the same blood from the right atrium, so all of this is deoxygenated blood, is pumped out of the heart via the pulmonary artery. I mentioned earlier that this is the only artery in the body that carries deoxygenated blood away from the heart. Okay, so now this blood that was first dumped into the right atrium, then pumped into the right ventricle, has now exited the heart and is going towards the lungs. Okay, so that's where we are with the lungs. Okay, so to explain what happens at the lungs, let me briefly describe what's going on with the respiratory system. All right, so this is your air passageways and the lungs. So you have the nasal cavity and the oral cavity, which are the two ways that we can breathe in air. And really, the only purpose of breathing in air is to capture the oxygen that's in the atmosphere. All right, so if we were on the moon or on Mars or any other place, we wouldn't have the capacity. We would have the capacity to breathe, but we wouldn't have the capacity to uptake oxygen. And because we wouldn't be able to uptake oxygen,